Welcome to the Renaissance and welcome to How Has Religion Benefited the Negroes, Part 1. And this very important notice that this video is not a propaganda or entertainment video. It is for educational, informational and reference purposes only. Please look for the reference sources and study them yourself. Remember, the Negro, unless he be Mohammedanized, is easily converted and as easily relapses into gross superstition or a negation of all religion, including his former simple but sound ideas of right and wrong. Sahara H. Johnston, and this is from the book A History of the Colonization of Africa by Alien Races by Sahara H. Johnston and published 1899. And from Charles A. Swan in 1909, we have a girl about Chitenge's size who was to be sold to a white man but who ran off before the bargain could be made. She won't be an easy piece to manage unless she comes under the power of the gospel. The white man makes the Negro a brute and then says he should be treated as such. And this is from the book The Slavery of Today or the Present Position of the Open Soil of Africa by Charles A. Swan and published 1909. And also from G. Mullion in 1818. The Negroes would worship a straw if they thought it had the power of enriching them. And this is from the book Travels in Africa to the Sources of the Senegal and Gambia in 1818 by G. Mullion and published 1820. If you were asked, how has religion benefited the Negroes individually and collectively, what would be your answer? And before we look into those, how did the Negroes get the religions? The Negroes got the religions through the slave trade and then through generational conditioning and of course faith by hearing. And so who imposed the religions on the Negroes? It was the European and Arab slave masters and slave hunters. They imposed the religions of the slave trade on the Negroes, and those religions are Christianity and Mohammedanism, now called Islam. And so were the religions brought peacefully? The answer is no. They were imposed with threats of slavery and violence. And are the religions true and beneficial to the Negroes? No, they are tools of the slave trade and slavery and benefited the slave masters, and that's the Europeans and Arabs instead. And when we say Europeans, it includes the Europeans living in the plantation today called USA, as well as Brazil. And just before we believe the fallacy of how the Negroes had religion before the slave masters brought their golden calves of Christianity and Islam, let us reference the dual mandate in British tropical Africa by F.D. Lugard and published 1922. And let us not forget that F.D. Lugard was the man they lied was the one who created Nigeria, whereas it was Tubman Goldie. The reason they had to lie with Lugard was because Tubman Goldie was the head of the Royal African Company, which was a slave trading company. So if they had said Tubman Goldie created Nigeria, then they would have needed to explain how he was the head of the slave trading company. So they lied that it would have been Lugard. Whereas what Lugard did was that he did the so-called amalgamation of the North and South. And here we can read that through the ages, the African has evolved no organized religious creed. And though some tribes appear to believe in a deity, the religious sense seldom rises above pantheistic animism and seems more often to take the form of a vague dread of the supernatural. And the reason we had to read this portion is for those who might argue that the Negroes had religion before the slave masters came. And so it allows us to ask the question, why the slave master could have given the Negroes the religion. Remember, if it was beneficial to the Negroes, the slave master would never have given it to them. And here is a side note on those who believe that it could be the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, that are killing fellow Biafrans in the southeast today. Our question to you would be, How do you believe those who will recruit their brothers from Boko Haram that are killing thousands of people into the army and tell you that they are repented and post them to the southeast? And you believe that the same IPOB that they will invade their houses, kill innocent people over, have thousands of them in jail, will leave them and be going to kill innocent people that are supposedly their siblings or their brothers? If that makes sense to you, then something must be wrong somewhere with your ability to reason. It is done by the slave hunters and the slave master. That is why you see that those killings are usually reported even before they happen, and they will say IPOB is suspected to have been the culprits or the ones behind it, and it is carried by the slave masters media, from the BBC to the CNN to the likes of Al Jazeera. And when IPOB issues a statement to deny that they couldn't have been the ones that did the killing, you will notice that those slave masters media will never publish them. That's how their games play. Remember, that was how they did the slave trade. And after the slave trade, they were able to convince everyone that it could have been the Negroes selling themselves, which we challenge you today to explain to us how that your father you see today could have sold you and you won't run away, could have sold your mom and your mom won't run away. But at that time, they convinced everyone else that the Negroes were like cattle. They don't move unless you ask them to move. And so part of this video will also show us what they used religion to do to the Negroes. Remember, the reason some people believe that it could have been IPOB killing the same people that are supposedly fighting for freedom for is because of religion, because the Negroes' faith comes by hearing. And permit us to digress a little, and in the same book we referenced, it tells us here that in some cases the native ruler was himself an alien conqueror holding in subjection tribes with which he had no affinity. In others, he was a despot, as in Benin, Uganda, Dahomey or Zululand, exercising a bloody tyranny. In others, again, pagan tribes carried on an internecine warfare and were powerless to defend themselves against organized slave raiders. Now, we challenge you. You see that the so-called Nigerian army, which was a slave hunting militia at that time, is there today and is not protecting you in the southeast. And somehow you believe that the same IPOB that they are killing without recourse to the law, they have thousands in jail just because they were said to belong to IPOB. And you believe that it could be the same people killing themselves, leaving the military. And don't be deceived by those things that tell you that the army has been killed, the police have been killed by IPOB, including the ones from Simon Ekpa. Those things are lies. If you doubt us, tell them to give you the names of those that were killed, and you will see that they can't give you those names or anything sensible. That's because Simon Ekpa was their agent, like we always told you. Whether you believe us or not, all those things that Simon Ekpa is doing were what we call a controlled agitation. They needed to use him to deceive people out of IPOB. The reason they did not even give Nnamdi Kanu the expedited hearing they claimed they were doing or trying him on is because IPOB was not fully destroyed. If you listen to the slave hunter called Nuhu Ribadu, who is a Fulani, you will hear him say they had destroyed IPOB. Ask yourself, why are they interested in destroying IPOB when IPOB is killing people that they hate? Above all, are they not the same people recruiting Boko Haram into the army? Now ask yourself, do they love you more than they love their own people? Why would they be recruiting Boko Haram into the army, regarding them as their misguided brothers, while coming down south to be killing innocent people and telling you that it is IPOB? Think about it very well, and please put it in the comment section if you believe somehow it is possible that IPOB are the ones killing those people. And please don't forget to tell us how they knew it was IPOB, even when IPOB themselves do not know about the killing, but hear it from the news by the slave master and his slave hunting accomplices. Remember, they are still working together the same way they did during the slave trade. And in the event you believe the lie that it wasn't the Mohammedans and Christians that carried out the slave trade, let us reference the Journal of Negro History by Carter G. Woodson, Volume 2 of 1917. And here we can read that the raiding bands attacked only tribes with whom they were at war or who refused to adopt the Mohammedan religion. So you see that as a Negro Mohammedan today, you are only obeying the will of the slave master passed down to you through generational conditioning. Let us also reference the slavery of today, or the present position of the open soul of Africa by Charles A. Swan, and this was published in 1909. And here we can read that we have a girl about Chitenje's size who was to be sold to a white man, but who ran off before the bargain could be made. She won't be an easy piece to manage unless she comes under the power of the gospel. Now we ask you, if that gospel was to your advantage, do you think the slave master could have given them to you? And we challenge you again, if you are from Biafra or Ambazonia, and you see that the British is the sponsor of the killings over the agitation for freedom and independence, and you still go to their church, do you think if there was heaven and the British knew about it, they would allow you attend church, but will not allow you demand for freedom or independence, be it in Biafra or Ambazonia? That's our question to you. If you believe it for any reason, please put it in the comment section. But let us show you how they did the slave trade and what they said from this same material. And it says, the Englishman, proverbial for his sense of justice, remember, proverbial for his sense of justice, which you can see in the case of Nnamdi Kanu today, that did nothing to them. But unfortunately, because Nnamdi Kanu has siblings, fellow Africans that don't have common sense, unfortunately. You see what fellow blacks are doing to their fellow blacks in the name of IPOB. Just think about it yourself and understand what we're saying. And study these materials yourself and you'll see what we mean. And he goes on to say, not only becomes accustomed to the open soul of Africa, which is the slave trade, which though covered with a kind of bandage in the form of contracts, etc., is still an open soul, but even advocates slavery as the best thing for the African, seeing he is so lazy and degraded. One in our diplomatic service put forth this view. This individual entirely forgot or was ignorant of the fact that we in the interior have no difficulty to get the natives to work for us, and this at a much lower figure than anyone else. And so far as their being degraded goes, they are degraded because the white man forces his vile rum upon them, and the effects of strong drink we need not go to Africa to see, for they are before our eyes. In every civilized land, the white man makes the Negro a brute and then says he must be treated as such. So you see what games they are playing. You see how they made Nnamdi Kanu a criminal for demanding freedom from the slave coast or Nigeria. Understand it, because if you still go to church or mosque, our question to you is, can you put what you have benefited from it in the years gone by? Let's say you are above 40 and was born into Christianity or Islam, and so you have attended mosque or church for 40 years. Could you tell us one benefit from going to church or mosque? And further here it says, so the ruination, spirit, soul and body of the black man is not taken into account when it is a question of gain to the white. So you see why no matter what they do to you, when Fulani herdsmen kill you, no matter what they do, the British do not bother. The Church of England will not say anything. The Church of Rome will ask you to pray, because they know that it is to their benefit. It doesn't matter whether you believe us or not. We can tell you for sure with 100% accuracy that if there was any advantage or any benefit from church or mosque, the same way the British are fighting against you talking about freedom, we didn't say give you freedom, is that they would have fought against you getting those religions.